Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine with Women, again, where we get to have a nice chat and a nice glass of wine with some excellent women. Slightly later today, I've finally been allowed to open my wine. I have been walking past the fridge saying, no, best not. So today, our guest is somebody who has done so much background work to try to counteract the astonishing push for male people to be able to participate in female sports, and is also as amusing on actual biologist here tweets as she is informative. We all know her by her delightful Twitter handle, FondOfBeetles, Dr. Emma Hilton. Emma, welcome.
Hello, lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. This is such a treat. It's lovely, and thank you. I know your train was late, and must have all been a bit stressful, but here we are. So, cheers.
Well, cheers.
So it's been quite a week, hasn't it?
It's been a month, I think, Helen. It's been, we're seeing a lot going on in sports at the moment. Some really kind of big moves. We'll get onto, that kind of thing. We've got a couple of court cases. We've got, a kind of massive push on the right to abortion in the States. It's all going off at the moment.
It really is. I mean, I went to vote very quickly before this, because I don't know if you saw, but there was last week, I think we went to our local hustings, me and some women from the Women's Rights Network. It was just the local hustings, and at the last minute I said, well, let's just take some leaflets, and that went insane. The Lib Dems went insane over that. I think
one of the candidates said it's a non-binary something.
Yes, it's a non-binary female said accused us of targeting.
And I remember looking at that and thinking, I was the chair of the Women's Place UK meeting in Manchester 6 weeks ago, and trying to manage that situation where you've got a genuine a protest. Now, I presume we all support the right to protest, but when it's very loud and it's right outside your building, and you're trying to chair a meeting and also manage what's going to happen around that meeting, and the Women's Place UK people talking to me, and I remember thinking, it's a leaflet. It's a leaflet. Leaflets, banners. You can't take.
No, and genuinely, we only gave about 5 because we thought, oh, let's just go in and get some nice seats. But it was quite the thing. Yeah. I mean, that was kind of amusing. But this Roe v. Wade thing is very sobering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's for me, it's always been tricky. I don't know if we've ever talked about this between ourselves, but for me, the kind of beginning, when I was, 12 or whatever, I guess when you start to realise you're a girl becoming a woman, all that kind of sentimental stuff that you do with your mum, that you start to realise that you are different from this other half of the population, and that's really fundamentally about what your body does, and suddenly you're kind of growing breasts and you're starting to menstruate, and so for me, the reproductive rights aspect of feminism was really I did that before I knew I was a feminist, because at 12 and 13 I went to a Catholic school, and I was saying to the nuns that were teaching us, no, I think women have the right to choose whether they want to be pregnant or not. And it was always really, really clear to me that this was something that was fundamentally it was part of our lives, it's part of women's lives, and that women can and should have control of that. And so that happened long before I ever thought, oh, that makes you a feminist. So
yes,
I think
I totally agree.
Too.
Yes, which is why I think some of the reaction that I've seen has been really, honestly, sort of horrifying, I think. You know, the reaction from, oh, well, it's your fault. If you'd have embraced gender ideology, then, you know, it would have been okay, but it's your fault. Honestly, like, sickening, really just unpleasant, kicking women whilst they're down, stuff.
You know, we expect it from the usual kind of, you know, internet commentators. And we probably all know who we're talking about there. We expect all this from, you've, you know, empowered them, you've given them this kind of cause. I was really surprised, I'm happy to name this player, I was really surprised by Brian Paddock doing that whole, I mean, I'm not surprised that he, you know, thinks that, and that, but doing the whole kind of, we're all in this together, like, stop kind of, you made this, but you know, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. And it's the same story for years, isn't it? You're like, if you have this particular view, you know, we both think it's quite a rational view about the importance of sex in some situations, that somehow you're a Nazi and therefore you're, you know, you're a right-wing evangelical Christian, or you're at least empowering them, or you're at least being paid by them.
Yes. I think it's I've seen you're ideologically in bed with, or ideologically aligned, or they're your allies, and you know, you question these, and then it becomes sort of more and more nebulous. You know, aligned with, sort of adjacent, and you're like, come on, just admit, just see it. Like, honestly, I don't even really care, but it's obviously propaganda designed to again vilify women who are opposing gender ideology, and in such an unpleasant, sort of fundamentally unpleasant way. I've been really shocked, I have to say. I didn't think that I could be this shocked, but I really have been.
It's almost, I think it's just they you know, the other side have seized upon this kind of, you know, it's come from Jolyon Maugham at some point, the Kira Bell trial. They've got no idea what things like Gillick competency are, what consent is about medical procedures, and there was some deliberate propaganda, I think, from the Kira Bell proceedings that said, oh, well, if you can't consent to puberty blockers, you can't consent to abortion. It's like, no, that's not how the law works. That's not how this process works. That's not how this medical, you know, framework works, which is about understanding whether you can consent. Gillick competency is about whether you can consent. So to say we're doing it for one medical procedure and it changes for that. So this has come from deliberately kind of planted, yes, credible sources. I mean, we might not think they're credible, yes, but ostensibly credible sources, including those in the legal profession. I think that's really troubling. And then suddenly, you know, I think probably nobody in the US or even the UK is particularly surprised that Roe v. Wade has come under attack and may fall. And we can only kind of work to see and support US feminists, you know, looking to
absolutely.
Look,
cheers to that. Yes,
yeah, to US women, we're, you know, call us.
Yes.
But it's just, now we're just being leapt on. Oh, you haven't said anything about this. Oh, you haven't defended it. You don't need to, mate. This is something I've been doing for 30 years, is arguing about this. It's basically just a given. For me, it's a given, you know. And well, I mean, you know.
No, I agree. Actually, somebody yesterday was trying to pin me down. They were saying, "So are you pro-choice, Helen?" And I thought, you know what? I'm not even going to answer you, because it is such a fundamental part of me. It would never even occur to me to say otherwise. I'm not going to dignify this conversation with an answer. All I'm going to do is continue to say exactly what I want to say, and you know, you do not distract me. I wanted to say, Cara Dansky in the comments. Yes, cheers. She says, thank you so much for your comment, which I thought, yes, which is very nice. But yes, so that is quite shocking. But as you say, it's been in the works. I mean, it's been in the works for like 50 odd years. But Trump really sort of, the perfect storm has been there for it to be in the works. But it is quite a surprising thing, isn't it, for such a tiny minority, how suddenly all powerful we are. We've managed to do something that the whole Democratic Party haven't been able to do, which has helped overturn Roe v. Wade.
Well, like, we're either 100 women with, I think, Helen, I know you're way more techie than I am. The idea that any of us have time to run 100 sock puppets to make us look 100 times kind of more, crowded than the other. And then the idea that we, on the much kind of vilified Turf Islands, the whole world hates us, ironically, amongst the best kind of women's rights in the world. Not perfect, but we've got abortion rights. And that's not to blame American sisters. I don't mean that. But we're either a tiny minority, and look, they've got like 5 of them at a protest, or we're able to influence the US government. Make up your mind. I don't mind being either one. I've always been quite happy. Me and
yes.
a few girls kind of doing some leafleting, going for a glass of wine afterwards, and I'd be quite happy if I could influence the US government. But I can't.
Yes. Well, honestly, we'd be done by now if we could do that, and then we could all just get on with everything else that we've still got to do. Anyway, so tell us, how did you first start? I mean, like most people, they just fall into things, but you actually do a huge amount of actual stuff behind the scenes, don't you? You've been on sort of committees, you've had to go through so many papers and put things together, you go to meetings, you talk to people, you've done a lot of this. How did that sort of start? How did you just fall into it? Or was it sort of a purposeful thing to do with your work? Or was it just accidental turfism?
So I think, none of our memories are perfect, and we all kind of think, oh, it was that or it was that. And, you see on Twitter, like, what piqued you? And people say something, I was like, oh, yeah, that was that. And then someone says something else, and I'm like, oh, no, it was that, really. I think the first meeting I went to, definitely the first meeting that I went to was Women's Place UK in Manchester. I think it was their first meeting. And it was not just after, but it was shortly after Maria McLaughlin had, been assaulted in Speaker's Corner. And I remember, I've been on Mumsnet, that hotbed of radicalism, extremism, domestic terrorism, whatever it's called. I'd been on Mumsnet doing a whole kind of, you hang around, am I being unreasonable on Mumsnet? It's just a laugh, right? And then you kind of get over to the feminism boards, and I was starting to think, this is a bit weird. There's something going on. And really, I think what captured me in terms of I can do something about this, or I can try it and do something about this, was looking at, I think I'd seen this picture of, Fallon Fox, the MMA fighter, who is a trans woman, who has, I think, is surgically kind of transitioned some years ago, but is a US Navy veteran, certainly US Armed Forces veteran, and had back in 2014 decided I'm in a ring with women, and had been licensed to do so. And there's this picture of him kind of, punching a woman, and she suffered lots of injuries. It's MMA, there are injuries that kind of abound. I just remember thinking it's not so much what's going on in the ring as the authorities looking at that and going, that's all right, we're just going to let that happen. I remember looking at that thinking, we've got a 6-foot male punching a 60-year-old woman in Speaker's Corner, and now I'm hearing about this kind of army veteran, military trained type, fighter being validated to punch a woman And I'm thinking that's not right. And so there was the sports thing. I'm quite sporty, and not in a remotely competitive way, but I'm quite keen on sport. I've always said on podcast, the only sport I really don't like is skiing, and I don't really know why. I just can't.
Oh no, I'm with you on skiing. It's such a faff. I mean, you've got to get to France.
Go up a mountain. I mean, that's really like. I think I'd like to go on a skiing holiday, but not because I'd be up a mountain. It's because I'd be drinking
the mulled wine, the mulled wine, and the getting in the sauna, and then getting in the snow, and then back in the sauna. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go on a skiing holiday then, Helen.
Skiing.
And that was the end of it. Yeah, so I was always like sporty. I'd always played sports. I was interested in sports, and I'm a biologist, right? And I'm a developmental biologist. I'm not just. I'm someone who has got quite a keen kind of how do things grow? How are bodies made? How are bodies different to each other? Why does this thing not look like that thing? And so it was just like there's a man in an MMA ring with a woman punching her. That's not fair. And I had this real moment of, well, is it fair? Someone said it's fair. It wouldn't be happening. You know, that kind of naive, like it wouldn't be happening. It wasn't fair. And I remember thinking, who said it's fair? Because I don't think it can be. And I don't want to say I didn't direct. I genuinely question, like, I'm going to go out and find some data here. There must be data about, men who are suppressing testosterone and what happens. And, everyone knows not intuitively, not going to get
Everyone knows. Everyone knows.
Going to shrink, we all know in terms of like a skeleton, it's not going to change, but like, okay, what happens to the muscles? Let's go and have a look. And so it's kind of being a scientist, a feminist, a sporty type, and my science being developmental biology that I thought, I think I've got something to add here, because nobody was looking at it from that
perfect storm. You're that perfect Venn diagram. You're literally there in the middle.
And so you'd had all these, I gave this talk at Fair Play for Women, Women's Place UK, about how the IOC.
I was there. It was excellent.
But the idea, that was the first time, because like I say, I'm not a competitive sports person. That was the first time I'd really thought, I don't think sports is what I thought it was. Because you assume they do due diligence, you assume that they've got, the IOC, they've got their international pick of the most brilliant scientists. And you assume they've, flown them into a lovely hotel for a week and really gone through it. No, they didn't. No, they didn't at all. And speaking to, these wonderful athletes, Sharon Davis has been so strong on this.
So cheers, Sharon, for that. I'm sure you're not watching, but cheers. You have been absolutely, and strong in the face of, just there by herself, really. I mean, supported by us, but not really by any other sports people. Daley Thompson.
I
met there. He was there when you talked as well. But that's it. She has been a real sort of tower of strength. We will not forget these people, these women. We won't forget them.
No, absolutely. And because she'd felt so strongly, she'd lost a gold medal to East German doping. And so a real keen sense of what it means to lose out to something that's unfair and to not have the institutions like the IOC back. She has made various claims. The British Olympic Committee has made various claims on her behalf. It looks like she might finally be getting her gold medal. But this is now 35 years for, sorry, Sharon. Is
that true? Could it be possible that she might actually get it?
I think I saw some few months ago that there was actually some movement to get Sharon a gold medal. Maybe we should make that a petition, because for UK sports, people will be behind her. And
look how powerful we are.
Yes, with all our 100 sock puppets. I didn't even know what a sock puppet was until I've been on. Yeah, it's like, what?
Well, we didn't know a lot of things, did we? I mean, you didn't know that you would actually end up being one of the first sort of grown-ups in the room where you're with, people who have worked in sports for years and years. You and Linda Blade, you're sort of sitting there saying, actually, hang on. And that takes a huge amount of strength to keep up the confidence in your thinking, no, I am right here. There is something here. I do need to, because it would have been so easy for people to just say, and I'm sure they did, no, it's all fine. It's, it's done. I think the strength that must have taken to say, no, it's still not right. I do need to do something about it is amazing. And you have changed things. I mean, you really have. You've brought this issue massively to light. You have done so much work. You've gathered so much data. You've sifted through so much data. You've presented it, and it's not just. I mean, you've been everywhere, haven't you? I mean, World Rugby. You did a lot of work there. Yeah. And now you've turned your hand to cycling.
The real problem, and I hope it isn't going to continue to be a problem, and we all know it takes time to build momentum, and we all get those kind of, is this going to be a tide turning moment where suddenly we've built enough momentum that there'll be a tidal wave coming. I think we've been waiting a little while. I think sports is going to change, but sports is definitionally almost kind of glacial in how it does stuff. And so it's really tricky when you are, and it's not just me. Nick and Fiona at Fair Play for Women have been absolutely fabulous, kind of working in the sports environment, and we all talk to people. We talk to famous people. We talk to Olympians who won't be named. We have meetings where you think, I don't think I can tell anyone I've been to these meetings. I'm not suggesting.
Oh, how frustrating is that you've met all these Olympians and you're not even allowed to say.
but they're if I had one wish, it would be to be able to say to all of these individual names, and maybe Nick, at Fair Play would say the same thing, to be able to say, look, if you would all come to trust us, if you would all come to one place, just turn up, you would see how many you are. Because when you're there saying, hang on, I don't think it's fair, there's a trans woman who wants to run against me or whatever, I don't think that's fair, you feel very on your own. But if you can say, look, you're not, you're part of this, you're part of something that's so much bigger than you can see. And I can tell you that, but you don't, why would you believe me? You don't have to believe me. I'd like you to, but if you could just all turn up, we would not have enough room in that. Where was the Women's Place UK talker, the Queen Elizabeth? Just in Westminster, wasn't it? You wouldn't have enough room in there for all the athletes who would get behind it if you could just persuade them.
But the British cycling women did do something though, didn't they? Finally, that critical mass finally was there. I mean, and I'm absolutely certain that you must have had a hand in this, sort of whispering in each one's ear saying, no, come on, you do have that, you're not alone. But they finally did.
Yeah, this was, I think this has been this could be a moment. So British cycling, there's like 3 major sports in the UK that are basically the majority of our Olympic sports, and that's athletics, swimming and cycling, right? And so between them, three sports federations run the majority of Olympic competition, or rather, they put forward the majority of Olympic athletes. And so cycling is quite powerful, just generally when they speak, people listen. And I think they wandered into something that didn't work. They made a policy. The first time they had to try and evoke the policy, it failed. It collapsed almost immediately, and it collapsed under the weight of female athletes who aren't just British cyclists, and they aren't just British Olympians. They're some of the most famous Olympians the world has seen, right? So British female cyclists are amongst the best sports people that we've ever had internationally. And so the intense power that they have, and this, you know, Kate Archibald's statement that Laura Kenny retweeted and was so perfect, was so word perfect, that you just think
no one could really disagree with that, could they? And I mean, I think a friend of mine was saying that the Kennys together have more medals in cycling than the whole of the USA, you know, in cycling. Right. I mean, they really do have some clout there. And so you're right, I was, because I've been thinking, where is Laura Kenny? Come on, I mean, I know I don't want to put it all on her. Where are Jason and Laura Kenny? They weren't there. But that statement really was so, I mean, for me, honestly, it was almost too mild. However, it was perfect for retweeting and for people to get behind. Literally couldn't argue with it. It was so, you know, this has been, I honestly, I did like the sort of the sentiment that this person, Bridges, shouldn't have been dragged into the limelight like that, in quite that way. Although, you know,
ultimately, Emily Bridges, whatever, you know, you think about inclusion or fairness or whatever, Emily Bridges complied with a policy, and about a week before was due to race, was excluded, right? And that's not nice. It's not nice for a senior athlete to deal with. Bridges is a junior athlete, and there is, you know, British cycling had a duty of care to Bridges. Whatever we think about the policy, and I'm happy to say I think it is terrible. It's not functional, whatever. But there are young athletes, not, you know, world hardened, take it on the shoulder, roll with the punches kind of athletes. These are some of the athletes they're young. And that's something that needs to be considered. You know, it's not in mitigation of anything.
No, I think that's a really fair point, actually. I mean, I think you're right there. Maybe that's sort of slightly sort of forgotten. And of course, you know, the papers were all over it on both sides. It must have been quite difficult being in the limelight. However, I do think that British cycling, and especially British cycling women, I'm just going to say cheers. I mean, it's just an excuse. It's just an excuse, really. But this is Wine with Women. Well done. Well done.
They all know who they are, and maybe some of you, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they all know who they are, and they've come from all age groups, from all cycling disciplines, and they have, you know, seen so many groups of retired Olympians, current Olympians, juniors, all people coming together and saying, women coming together and saying, no, this is our sport and you will listen to us, has just been, it's almost like unionizing women, you know, like, and we've spoken briefly, you know, vaguely, do we need a women's union?
That's honestly, that is such a, yes, that is an interesting thing. And I think we've said, I suspect I say it every single time that I'm on any live stream, which is, that has been a massive silver lining to this whole fight, is that women have come together, women from all walks of life, women have come together, and we will not be forced apart again. I mean, I really hope that this is not forgotten, how quickly and how easily our rights have been sort of trampled on. Shockingly so, and even more so in the US, although, you know, again, like we said, that Roe v. Wade thing has been sort of 50 years in the making. But just in general, how quickly and how easily and how shockingly, to me, men have just jumped on this bandwagon, in an unforgivable way, I think. Well, they've jumped on this bandwagon, kicking women when they're down, just, you know, hoping, well, not hoping, I'm not sure, I don't want to put motivations in their head, but but certainly going along with it, just going along, shockingly so, to be honest.
Well, I think so. If you were to devise a strategy, right, to undermine a whole set of women's rights that you didn't quite like because they're getting a bit uppity, and you've got 20 rights to deal with, let's say, you're going to rank them in some kind of attack mode. Well, by far the easiest way is to just get rid of what those words mean, and then you create so much confusion that none of those rights mean anything. It's far easier to say the word woman doesn't mean anything than it is to address women shouldn't have abortions, right? It's much easier because you take out all 20 in one. Women shouldn't have abortions. Women shouldn't have the right to a safe space in, a changing room. Women shouldn't have dedicated rape crisis services. Women shouldn't have sports. And so rather than actually dealing with the individual arguments, just say that single brand, that word means this. And it's a genius strategy.
It has been a genius strategy. It has been, but we have resisted it. Really. Oh, I'm quite bright. I'm gonna put the warm light. Oh no, that's too cold. Warm light there. Oh no, I don't know. We'll go with that. I've got new light setter. Oh, I look a bit pink. Yes, we've resisted it. To a, I think, quite shockingly to the other side. I mean, I genuinely, like people are always saying, sort of Turf Island. Why are they holding out? It is, maybe it is because we're an island, but we are holding out on this. We're not giving up, and in fact, we're pushing back. And honestly, and it's because we're obviously on the side of. Well, it's just reason, isn't it? We're on the side of reason. Like you, whenever you enter a thread, which starts with actual biologist here, and you enter, I mean, we've all learned now what sexual dimorphism means. We know all about sort of how, we all know about small gametes, large gametes. I mean, so much. I mean, I did biology A-level, but genuinely, we have learned so much about this. Has it shocked you to the extent that sort of academics have been willing to just say, yeah, no, biology is actually really complicated. Sex is not really there.
Biology is complicated. It's not, people think biology is like the really soft science. It's not really what soft and hard science means. Soft doesn't mean easy. It means it's a little bit more based on probability boundaries rather than something like maths, which is basically like, 0, no, or there's a hard boundary and that's the end of it. Biology in general is complicated. I never really thought that anyone would question the biology of there are two sexes, there are males and females. Rarely some people have genetic disorders or they've been exposed to environmental issues that mean, their reproductive systems and their hormones or whatever are different from what we think are typical in male and female. But it was never in question that this was, the framework. And to see people say, oh, but there's like 20 genes or whatever, 20 odd genes, 200 genes. It really doesn't matter. There's this much kind of effort that goes in to make your reproductive system. That doesn't mean you don't make a reproductive system. It just means it takes a lot of, work to make it. And so it's really, there's a lot of really confusing arguments. And I've always found it really odd to say, oh, but, there are some people with XXY chromosomes. Yeah, there are people with XXY chromosomes. They're male. And why are they male? Why are they male? It's because they've got a Y and they've got a particular gene called SRY that makes them male. Oh, but what about males who are XX? Well, what gene have they got? Because they've got the SRY gene. You can say like it's all really complicated, but I'm a developmental biologist, right? My approach to science, people say it like it's a bad thing. It's reductive. It's about getting rid of all the shit and seeing what single strands kind of still true, still hold. What's the minimum that needs to happen to make you know, X, Y, Z. And so for me, it's always been really straightforward. We've got a huge diversity of life on the planet. I'm saying it's for me. It's textbook. It's not for me. I haven't reasoned this out first principle.
It's for everyone though, because like I said, you know, we all have these talking points now, things that we never thought that we'd be saying. But you know, we can all say, oh, SRY gene and gene expression. We've all learned this because we've all had to counteract these arguments. I mean, I did biology up to A level, but that was it. We didn't learn about that. We learned it from your threads.
The one thing that really winds me up about this, and I had to write a piece, I don't know if I can tell you what it was, but I had to write something a little while ago. And one of the things I looked up, and I've talked about it on Twitter very briefly, and is a sarcastic kind of set of threats, is what some academics, you know, say in public on their social media is very different to what they're publishing, right? So you can find, you know, academics that are on Twitter fully kind of signed up to queer theory, that, oh, it's also complicated, it's a spectrum, it's whatever. You go and check their papers and they know precisely what male and female are. They're stratifying data by male or female. They're selecting subjects for study by male or female. Even the most kind of high-profile voices in these arguments are publishing papers where it's very clear they have no misunderstanding of what male or female are. So I always find it really tricky. And you know, okay, some people have a bit of a political spin on what they do, and versus their kind of very dry technical academic language. But this is a real contradiction, actually. You can't have an academic saying, we looked at, and I mean, this, someone could Google it and they'll know who I'm talking about. We looked at same-sex behaviour in rams, right? In male sheep, we looked at same-sex behaviour in rams, and we decided, you know, it was linked to X, Y, or Z, not chromosomes, just generally something. And at no point did he ever feel the need to specify how he knew what a male ram was, you know, how he identified a male ram, what same-sex behaviour was. And you just think, it's all likes, the media all for likes, and you don't even believe it, and it doesn't underpin your academic.
Well, and even the whole all for likes thing, it's not, you know, it actually matters hugely to women. I mean, this is undermining the very system of our rights, and that's honestly, the cowardice, the cowardice of that is just despicable. I mean, there are people that you know, there are things that people have said, behaviours that people have exhibited, which are really, really quite unforgivable, I think, in this fight. You know, this isn't fun. I mean, it might be fun for some people. And I mean, honestly, look, we're having fun. But fundamentally, for us, this is a huge thing. This is a huge thing. We've spent, look what you've done. I mean, all of this stuff that you're doing for sports and things, this is all your time. This isn't your job. This is your time that's been taken up here to basically fight for things that are so obvious, so apparent, things that we've already fought for, we've already won. How is it possible that people can say, oh, well, you know, we took them for granted? Yes, of course we took them for granted, because they're reasonable things. Honest to God.
But that makes us like some weird traditionalists, Helen, that are holding on to some kind of non-progressive thing. It's not, you know, it's not non-progressive that women want to get changed with that. I genuinely, you know, can we talk about the Slenderland question?
Yes, please do.
You know, it's so perfect. It just throws it right back. And you know how, we've all seen how difficult it is for people to answer. I think you've got about 3 straight answers in how long? 3 or 4 years now?
Well, yes, I would say about 4 years. Yeah. Yes.
All been, no, yeah, I do think men have, you know, however you frame it, a person with a penis. You know, I do think men have the right to basically get their penises out in a female changing room. And I think what they hear when, you know, women talk about, I know we've talked about it before, when we go to a female changing room and we talk about, you know, female solidarity, and we talk about understanding that bodies come in different shapes and sizes, and that's a really positive thing for women to understand, and it's a particularly positive thing for girls to understand. And we see women with mastectomies, and we see, you know,
or HRT patches, you know, just things that you think these are really useful to know, really useful to know. The first time in my work changing room that I saw a woman with a HRT sort of patch, I thought, okay, I get it now. I see it. That's interesting. And this, you know, I'm not sure if this is what you were going to say, but I laugh all the time because I see what people sort of say about me and the questions they ask me or the accusations they make about me. And every morning I go to work and we're in, you know, I cycle in and there's the other female cyclists and some of the runners or some people who just walk in. And, you know, it's, well, how often do you see people's genitalia? And I'm like every day. I mean, we're not like staring. I mean, honestly, women's ones, you can barely see them. I mean, you've got to really look for them. But it is just, you know, we come out the shower with no clothes on and we're chatting to each other. But we're just chatting about things.
But men think when you are naked in a changing room with a woman that you're some kind of like, you know, look at me. It's not that. It's just we're not hiding behind a towel. We're not, you know, we're neither displaying, but nor are we ashamed. And we shouldn't be ashamed because we all look different and we all, you know, have different things that we do to ourselves, and we've all had different experiences, and we're all
and we might have these experiences, and and I think that's one of the really key things about sort of young girls or teenagers going into women's changing rooms. You know, your boobs will actually end up looking like that. I mean, they will. You will need that HRT patch, you know, like, I mean, this will happen. You know, your waist will kind of go a bit. You will get those stretch marks. It's really important because when you do have that baby and you have those stretch marks, you think, well, you know, this is what happens. It's normal. And this idea that women's changing rooms, I mean, they look at it through a male lens, don't they? I mean, it's
they think
exactly
it's like locker room kind of, look at me, I'm swinging my dick around. We're all like we're comparing each other. We're comparing to each other. So they think women do that, and we're like exhibitionists. We're not exhibitionists. For me, I'm not an exhibitionist, but I'm not ashamed. I'm not walking around, you know, with nothing on, but nor am I like catching myself behind a towel. There's you know, it's just normal behavior in the changing room that I think so when we say like they're, you know, we're comfortable with women, all shapes and sizes, whatever they look like, blah, blah, blah. I never thought they would think that meant penis-sized women. You know, it seemed perfectly reasonable to me that I meant, you know, women, not the size of woman that comes with a penis.
Yeah.
They don't get that. They're like, oh, if women come in all shapes and sizes, why not one with it? No, mate.
Well, it's very clear, I think, from all of the answers. I mean, the ones that reply, they obviously have never lived a woman's life. It's, you know, it's one of the most obvious parts of the question. They haven't lived a woman's life. It's this idea that you shouldn't have to see anyone's genitalia, and you're like, no, genuinely, women don't care. Like I said, you know, you've really got to search for that, you know, like especially you're seeing a woman's vagina and you're like, no, seriously, not do you, like, no one's saying that.
I think only medics might have seen my vagina, really. I mean, you know, I've never given birth, but so I think on a smear test is probably the only time anyone has. I don't remember a speculum ever being involved in, you know, my normal sex life.
Yes. So the people who answer yes, they've clearly never lived as women, and then the people who obfuscate, I still, you know, or they're like the ones who say, oh well, communal changing rooms, cubicles is the answer. Again, they have no idea. Like women, like genuinely, absolutely do not care. I mean, some women do, some women are a bit shy, but no woman is frightened because a woman has got her boobs up next to them. I mean, like, they're just not frightened. They just doesn't occur to them to be frightened. But, if a bloke was there, even if he didn't have his cock out, like, really, you'd be, he's there. And you're in a vulnerable, you're in a position of vulnerability. That's the point. It's not literally seeing it. It's the fact that you can literally see it. And those things are different.
Yeah, I think I see a lot like cubicles just get changed in a cubicle. To me, I find that quite elitist. I play a sport where I'm changing in, school gym, right? And they're just communal changing rooms. And they're, you remember the pegs on a line and then the line of showers. I mean, I just go home and have a shower because I own a house now because I'm not a school child. But when you're at school and you're changing in that environment, I remember walking in actually at the velodrome. I was there yesterday. I used to play netball at the velodrome, and I walked into a communal changing room. Now there were toilets available that I could have gone and got changed in. Well, I walked into a changing room that had always been girls, women, and I play netball. I'm 45. It's mostly women. Girls are doing like county level and national level stuff. We're just a load of women getting together, kind of chucking a ball around. And I remember walking into this changing room, and there was a boy in there, right? And the girls weren't undressed or anything. He was just like, they were having a chat after their cycling session. And I remember walking in thinking, first of all, you're like 20 something or more, maybe 30 years younger than me. I'm not getting changed in front of you because, well, that's bonkers. And also, what do I do? Can I ask him to leave? Because I wouldn't mind getting changed. I wouldn't mind getting changed in front of a 15 or 17-year-old girl. But I'm not getting changed in front of a 15 to 17-year-old boy. And I remember thinking, is that my problem? It's not like, no, I don't really think a 17-year-old boy is a sexual threat to my physical integrity.
No, but you don't want to see him.
15 to 17-year-old boy. That's not. And then you're thinking, oh God, is it just because I'm so socialized to think that they're looking? And you just think, no, I just don't want a boy.
No, and honestly, I think one of the silver linings about this fight is that we've all had a chance to think about what we think, and this in the past. This idea, are we socialized, etc. Why are we thinking? But actually, in the end, it's just no. That's my instinctive reaction here, and this is an instinctive reaction born of a lifetime of living as a woman, and I just say no. Like everyone has said so many times, no is its own word. It's a full sentence. Just no. What did happen? In the end, why was he in there?
Well, I think when someone who was basically old enough to be his mother walked in, he finished this conversation and left. I didn't have to do anything, but that's a good thing.
Was that you? Yes,
that was me. No, I didn't do anything. I just walked in, obviously with a bag, and thinking And he said, anyway, whatever. I don't know how 15-year-old people talk to each other these days. But, just
they talk to each other like this. Dude, it's coming up behind you. It's coming up behind you. Go on, shoot it. In my experience, that's how they talk to each other.
He left and it was fine, but I remember thinking, what do I need to do? He didn't immediately jump up when I went in. And so I'm thinking, am I gonna leave and find another,
But he did.
But he left, and that's great,
Well, that's something. Yes, I suppose. Yes, you didn't have to make a fuss, and also he didn't have to phone the police because of Mermaid's advice.
Say again, sorry.
He didn't have to phone the police because of Mermaid's new advice. Did you see that?
I haven't followed it up in that I haven't clicked through a link, and now Twitter tells you, are you sure you want to click this link?
Yeah.
But have they genuinely said that you
Yes.
can phone 999 if you are asked to leave a changing space?
Yes. Yes, they said, you know, phone 999 because, you know, if you feel in danger, if you feel threatened, yes, you should phone 999 for this. Their advice, you know, they are again, they have all done it well. You know, there was a chap today. I mean, I think he was a bit of a troll, but this idea that actually, no, female changing rooms aren't, you know, no, they aren't for females. They are for anyone who identifies as female. They've always been like this. And this idea that, you know, it's almost, they're all sort of fake it until you make it, isn't it? You know, they're putting out this propaganda, these lies, this pretense, in the hope that people will just sort of get bamboozled and think, oh, well, maybe it has always been like this. But yes, that is Mermaid's advice. It is shocking.
I saw, it was that Tom, what's his face? Are we allowed to name people? Tom Langham?
Yeah.
I saw that, like, it's always been like that. And if you want something different, then remove yourself. It's like, that's what we did 50 years ago or 80 years ago or whatever.
Yes.
It's always quite an own goal when they say
it is. And this was, and you know,
toilets and just say like turf only. It's like, we'll just call it female, shall we?
Yeah. Yes, we've all seen that before. Oh, maybe all the turfs should get their own changing room, and we're like, Okay.
Who was that doctor? Adrian, what's his name? Adrian Haddon? No, Harrop. Who first said it like it was a new thing. Like, why don't all the turfs just get their own toilet? Right? I tell you what, there's a lot more of us. So why don't we just pragmatically get the ones who don't want to care about their privacy and dignity and safety to have their own toilets? Because that's what works better, really. Yeah.
We've forgotten that about Haddock, hadn't we? As somebody said. Oh, there he was. I mean, he's been replaced by a number of others, but you know, we had forgotten about him. Can I ask, have you? I mean, how soon they forget? So you're doing all of this stuff aside from your actual work as a developmental biologist. Now you are actually quite open and out doing this. You know, you use your own name. You're doing it. Have you had much pushback? Am I allowed to ask? Are you allowed to say from your university?
Right. So I have had lots of attempts to push me back to the university. So I mean, I'm going to miss stuff off the list. I recently wrote it down in a list. There's a remarkable set of circumstances that involved me being reported for a hate crime. And then the person who reported me for a hate crime wrote to my university to say I was reported for a hate crime that they themselves had.
So reported to the police for a hate crime?
Yeah. And I don't know which police force. They wrote to the university to say, do you know that one of your staff members has been reported for a hate crime? Which I was, because they'd done it.
Because they'd done it, yeah.
And then wrote to a journal, the sports journal that I was published in, and said, one of your authors has been reported for a hate crime. You should know this. And I'm thinking, it's just you.
It's just one person. Yes, it's just you.
You're just doing this. and so it was a remarkable lesson for me. And I think like creating your own chain of evidence, creating your own narrative, and writing to media people who had said, can you come, you know, and be on this kind of news thing? And this person would be there saying, oh, you know, she's under investigation for hate crime. I was thinking,
it's still you.
He would write to me saying, what's that, Emma? And I'm like, I mean, they've done that. So it's almost like if you can create your own story, right? And you can try and draw everyone into this web that you have created. But apart from that, I mean, I'm laughing at that because I think I have ignored it, although if anyone is really following me on Twitter, you've probably got a fair idea who it is. But there's probably some kind of real life harassment claim there, because that's affecting actually. Yeah, hate crime. What for writing a sports paper?
Yes, for knowing that there are two sexes and wanting female cyclists to be able to cycle just with female cyclists. It's hardly a bloody hate crime, is it?
No.
Well, where's the crime?
Yeah, I don't know. It was a hate crime incident or whatever it's. I don't know. But that's that's been the kind of single targeted harassment kind of thing, I think. But I mean, I get complaints, I guess. My university has been fabulous. So I work at the University of Manchester. I'm happy to give them a shout out for this. I've been called in a couple of times. They are broadly supportive of, you're polite, you're respectful, you're a bit sarcastic, you're allowed to be robust.
And you're allowed to be sarcastic honest. God, you're allowed to be sarcastic to the shit that people say. Actual biologist here. I mean, honestly, that even that needs sarcasm. I mean, just that started, isn't it?
Yeah, like your friendly neighborhood biologist. Yeah. I've been deplatformed from debating at other, like Russell Group, Russell Group for the Americans and etc. They're the kind of Ivy League type thing. Be deplatformed, just conflicts of interest about, you're transphobic. I think is Flickr still existing, or did Instagram basically take it over?
I have no idea.
But, people posting like, we haven't talked. Here's your easy way to make a complaint about Hilton. Here's a click link. Now that sheet, what was that like Excel sheet that listed all the like GC women? Yes. Were you on it, Helen?
Of course. I mean, honestly, wasn't everyone a bit panicked that they wouldn't be? I mean, I looked for me, and I've always got Helen Saxby's always above me, and she wasn't there, and I was like, oh shit, she's not there. She's been left out. It's like she's not been invited to the party. Am I allowed to go still? Should I ask, can my friend come?
I saw someone, sorry, whoever you are, someone make a post saying, we're all just like, did we make the cut?
Yeah.
The amount of effort it takes to make an Excel spreadsheet with I clicky links through to search their old tweets or recently look at their new ones. Oh my God, you've not got anything better to do with you. Well, the answer is obviously not, but because they don't have jobs apparently.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I like the one the other day when somebody said, "Oh, Helen, you've tweeted, X many times today. Why didn't you go out and touch grass?" Somebody excellent sort of came behind and said, "You've literally tweeted 135 times more. What is wrong with you?" So listen, there is one thing that I think that I really want to ask you, and if you feel that the answer would be really disappointing, you just don't answer. Where did your Twitter handle? Where did that come from?
So it came from. So it's a quote by an evolutionary biologist, a geneticist. He's British. He's called JBS Haldane. And he was probably, this is going to be a hot take. I suspect I think he was more brilliant than Darwin. Now, if you say that as like a British
hate crime,
that's insane, right? But he was brilliant. And so there's a quote that's attributed to him where he's talking about the nature of a creator. Now, I think it's a bit apocryphal, with the Apple and Newton and that kind of thing. But who knows? Anyway, what he said was basically, if there is a God, I'm putting this into, my own language. If there is a God, he must be inordinately fond of beetles. And the reason for that is because there's so many beetle species.
So many.
They're like a third of the landmass of the earth, right? There are so many beetle species. It's unreal. Beetles are basically the most perfect creature that's ever like evolved in the world. So JBS Haldane noted this and said, if there's a God, he really likes beetles. And I used to spend like 20 years ago, and again, it'll tie into the kind of religious abortion kind of thing, but the religious creationism thing, you know, like Earth was created in 6,000 years or whatever. And the number of beetle species in the world basically negates that. You can't get that number of species of beetles in 6,000 years. So that's where it came from. I used to spend 20 years ago, I was fighting creationists. And now 20 years later, I'm fighting, and I'm happy to say, like new creationists, like people who are still doing science denial in a different way, with a different angle. But they're still, to my ears, they sound exactly the same. Like the Earth is 6,000 years old. There are more than two sexes. They're both denials of fundamental kind of knowledge about evolution, about how life on Earth has happened and is continuing to happen. And so it just always struck me. I wrote or I gave a speech that it's science denial. It's the new creationism. And other people have said the same. It's like a religion. It's like you just, all these people
it is
biblical kind of, you know, God. Now they're free to believe in that. I don't care if someone wants to live their life as if the world is 6,000 years old. I don't know what they do when they're in an earthquake. I don't know what they think is happening there. You know, like there's plate shifting and they're just like, no. It's like, oh, it's just God.
No, God's angry.
Something. Yeah. But it's the same. To me, it just sounds the same. It just like, oh no, there's not two sexes. Like there's a billion years of,
honestly, this is such a perfect story. Such a perfect story. I see people in the comments saying, oh, I knew this story. I did not know this story. And I've just quickly asked, and this is just perfect. And because you've said it's like this perfect sort of circle, isn't it? You know, you were fighting this and you've had sort of experience in fighting this. And now, as you say, sort of 20 years later, you're fighting it again, but almost in a more extraordinary way, because this is fundamental to human life. I mean, literally everyone you fight with was born from a woman. I mean, there is no question, absolutely no question. I can say that with absolute 100% certainty.
I mean, no maker is going to take that bet off you, Helen. Do you know?
Yeah, I'm going to say, I win on that one. I'm actually right.
Yeah, but it is. And, you know, like noting the timescales, I've always found it really, well, I mean, it's always concerning when people don't kind of understand basic science. But it's really concerning that the kind of, like, you know, the heyday of creationism is probably 60 years ago, right? 60, 50 years ago. And there were laws in the US about how you taught evolution. You couldn't, you know, what you taught about God and his role in the earth. It's always a him, obviously. And I had a student, no, it wasn't my student, but someone in the lab a couple of years ago, and she came from a southern state, and she was 20, and she said she'd not heard about the theory of evolution until she went to college, right? Now, she was really intelligent. It was nothing to do with her intelligence. She's arrived, you know, on her own in a great university, and it was a really competent biologist, but she just simply hadn't heard of it. And so that's 50 years, and it's still about the lie that's being propagated. And that's the worrying thing, that it's generations away before we start to overturn this. And I don't know if it's worrying. I'm confident
it is worrying. No, it is worrying.
The sex denial, the denial, you know, it is, for me, it's a new attack on like evolutionary theory, which is just, it's ridiculous.
Which I thought we'd won pretty much. I mean, come on.
Generations thinking, doesn't it? And I don't think we're going to do it in a generation. which is really worrying that, like I say, you can still get a 20-year-old from.
But it's a different fight now, though. It's a different fight, though, isn't it? Because then they didn't have the information. Now is that they're being told the information, and it's everywhere. But who's the most persuasive? What tribes are you in? How are you? You know, why are you? You're not being taught critical thinking. It's different things that are being withheld in terms of teaching.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the same fight, but essentially the outcome is the same. Really, I mean, the whole, your high school biology to people who have got PhDs in biology is just astonishing. Because people repeat what they've seen written down. You see people say it and you're like, oh yeah, it's that argument, it's that argument. They're literally written down and people just pick them up and reiterate them because as if that's the answer. That is frightening.
I think my worst, my most annoying kind of Twitter foes are not the high school biologists who probably have been taught that XX is female and XY is male, which, let's be clear, for the vast majority of the population is true.
Yes.
I mean, the vast majority, like plus 99%.
Yes. For all intents and purposes in an argument, it's the rest. It's negligible, not as humans, but in an argument.
As you consider a scientific model, if you get close to a predictive effect of plus 99%, you're sorted. But so it's not those people who are saying like XX and XY is male, female. That's, I can think that's, broadly right. And it's the model we work on. It's the ones that are in the middle that say, oh, but there's like XXY or there's males who have like uterus kind of remnants because they've got a genetic disorder. They don't call it a genetic disorder. It's just a difference of sex development. I'm like, males aren't supposed to have uteruses. This is not a normal variation. This is a mutation that's caused something to go wrong. So they're the problem because what I've always said is I'm not high school and I'm not you. I've come out the other side. Yeah. and so when they're like, oh, you're so high school, I'm like, no, I'm like
not so much. No. And honestly, this is where we started. This is yeah. I mean, I see people that, when there's this thread from somebody who does start with, hi, waves hand, actual biologist here. And I'm like, oh, please, if I go down this, please let me see FondOfBeetles. And I'm like, yes. I mean, again, one of the other things I think we've all learned from each other is not just the arguments, but also how to maybe conduct an argument, how to counter, not just exactly what you say, but how you say it, how you take what somebody says and then think, okay, how can I counter this? I think we've all learned a great deal about maybe the sort of the pros and cons and what a good argument is, what a bad argument is. We all know what a straw man is. We all know what an ad hominem is. We've all learned a lot.
I think I've been told off. So I don't know, because, right, I'm a scientist. I pay very little attention to anything that's humanities based. And someone once said to me, all you do is like the Socratic method. And I'm like, what the fuck is the Socratic method?
Yeah, I had to look it up.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I do. Although if I'd have been clever, I would have said, oh, is that what I do? but it's that. It's because I'd rather, I think if you teach or, I'd rather get someone to arrive at the answer than tell them the answer. And that can be, I think, construed as patronizing if you're saying, oh, but what do you think is happening here? And it's quite difficult on Twitter. I mean, let's be clear, this is time I'm really sarcastic. I'm not actually, saying, oh, and what do you think is? What I'm trying to say is
hot take.
But it's always been really like, because it's part of explaining your own thought process, isn't it? When you ask the question, is something that you can then talk about, really. And so, yeah, I get this kind of, but I get this, oh, you're so patient. It's like, it's not, it's just my character that I'm just trying to teach, which is not a virtue necessarily. I just think it's just the way I've always learned. When someone says, but I want you to answer my question, that's the way I learn. So I guess have extended that.
But it works on so many different levels, because also, it helps you, but it helps the people who are reading, and it also can be construed as sarcastic towards the other side, so it's sort of, it's pretty perfect.
Just to reiterate, it is mostly sarcastic. Like, say, like, and why do you think that is? I mean, there's probably, I'm sure someone could analyze, like, when she's gone from like Socratic to like, she's bored now.
Well, it's like me when I've done patient asking, and then I've been, there's a point that I get to, and I've put this in my bio, where people are rude and they're sarcastic and they're unpleasant, but there's a simple point when we've got to that stage where I think, right, now I'm going to retweet, and now people can read the whole thing, and I think, and I think that's okay. I think this is one of the things people say to me all the time. Oh God, you cause a pile-on. You're retweeting yourself, and I'm like, one of the most powerful weapons that women have got here on Twitter is the power of the network, the networking that we've got. These women have your back. There's power in a union, and so this idea that, oh, you want other people to back you up. You're like, yes, I do. I do want other people there, because I want other people to see this argument. I want other people to see how bad it is and what people are actually saying. Why wouldn't I? This is an important point. So I have to say, I mean, everyone who has ever joined in an argument with me, thank you very much.
I see someone in the chat has just said, do you know what sex is, Flower? I think I wrote that like a few weeks ago. If I call someone Flower, I'm being sarcastic. I wouldn't do that for an academic colleague.
Anyway, I think we've come up. I know we could carry on talking for such a long time, but we're coming up to an hour and 10, and I'm conscious that my wine bottle is going down and down and down, and I suspect I'm just going to start rambling soon. So I think we should probably call it a day. Emma, can I say thank you so much? You've been such a brilliant guest. This has been so great, and everyone in the comments, I genuinely think that at some point we just should do this in the pub, where everyone can actually talk to each other. I love the interaction that we have here.
What we need is a massive turf party.
Yes,
I don't know how big a venue we would need, but we must be able to find somewhere.
Well, I think what we need is turf parties in different centres, and we can have one big Zoom thing, so everyone is Zooming with each other. But we can have one in London, we can have one in Cardiff, we can have one up in Scotland. J.K. Rowling, although honestly, if J.K. Rowling's hosting, I'm going to Edinburgh. We're all going up there. No, going up there. Anyway, so thank you all very much for joining, and see you again. Bye.